ChangeNotifier is a special class in Flutter that helps manage and notify changes in your app's data. It acts like a messenger that tells all the listeners, widgets or parts of the app to rebuild or update when something changes. For example, if the number in a counter app changes, the ChangeNotifier will notify all the widgets that are showing the counter to update their display. ChangeNotifier explained with a newspaper agency, a real-life analogy. Imagine this: a newspaper agency is like the backbone of your Flutter app state management, and here's how it works. ChangeNotifier, the publisher. Think of the newspaper agency as the ChangeNotifier. It holds all the latest news, state of your app. Whenever there's a breaking story, the agency takes charge of informing all the subscribers, listeners. Listeners, the subscribers. Now, who gets the news? The readers, of course. These readers are your listeners. When they subscribe to the newspaper, via Add Listener, they'll automatically get updates whenever the publisher releases a new edition. Notify listeners, breaking news. When the agency has some hot off-the-press news, they call notify listeners. This is like the agency publishing a new edition and delivering it straight to the subscribers' doorsteps. Everyone who subscribed instantly gets the update, no delays, no waiting. Remove listener, unsubscribing. But what if a reader decides to cancel their subscription? That's where remove listener comes in. Once a reader unsubscribes, the agency stops delivering the news. They're no longer in the loop. Why is ChangeNotifier important? Just like a newspaper agency simplifies news distribution, ChangeNotifier simplifies state management in Flutter. It ensures every reader widget always has the latest news state effortlessly. Create a new counter application to study ChangeNotifier. Create a new Flutter project. Start by creating a new Flutter project. Clear the default content in the main.dart file to start from scratch. Create a counter model. Inside the lib folder, create a new folder named model. Add a new Dart file named countermodel.dart. Define the countermodel class. Create a class named countermodel that extends ChangeNotifier. By extending ChangeNotifier, this class can manage the state, like a counter value, and notify its listeners whenever the state changes. Purpose of countermodel. This class is designed to manage a specific piece of app state, in this case, the counter value. Notify other parts of the app when the state has been updated, so they can react accordingly, rebuild the UI. Declare a local variable. Add a private variable _counter to hold the current value of the counter, which starts at 0. Create a getter for counter. Define a getter for _counter. This provides read-only access to the counter value, ensuring encapsulation and preventing direct modification. Define an increment method. Create an increment method that increases the value of _counter by 1. Notify listeners. This method, provided by the ChangeNotifier class, is used to notify all listeners, widgets or other parts of the app, about state changes. When notify listeners is called, any widget listening to this ChangeNotifier will rebuild, ensuring the UI is updated with the latest state. Define a decrement method. Create a decrement method similar to increment, which decreases the value of _counter by 1. Like increment, it also calls notify listeners, to notify all listeners about the change. Create a screen for displaying counter value and increment-decrement functionality. Create a screens folder and add a Dart file named counterscreen.dart. Create a stateful widget. Inside the counterscreen.dart file, create a stateful widget named counterscreen. Instantiate counter model. Instantiate the counterModel class to manage the counter's state. Don't forget to import the counterModel.dart file from the models folder. Initialize state. Inside the initState method of the counter screen, add a listener to the counterModel object. Add listener. The listener function is executed whenever notify listeners is called on the counterModel object. Inside the callback, call setState to notify Flutter to rebuild the widget tree where this state is used. Rebuilding ensures that the UI reflects the updated value of the counter. Dispose of resources. Override the dispose method. Remove the listener from the counterModel object to prevent memory leaks. Call the dispose method on the counterModel object if necessary. Inside the build function, create a scaffold. Set a title for the app bar and define the body. Place a column widget inside a center widget. In the column, add a text widget as the first child to display a message. Access the counter value and display it as the second child of the column using another text widget. Align the column's children using main axis alignment for proper spacing. Next, add a row to the column for increment and decrement buttons. Add an elevated button for incrementing the counter, calling the increment function from the counterModel object. Add another elevated button for decrementing the counter, calling the decrement function. Next, go to the main.dart file. Create a stateless widget named MyApp. Inside the build function, return a material app. Set the counter screen widget as the body, ensuring you import the counterscreen.dart file. Then, create the main function. Call the MyApp widget inside the runApp function to start the app. Finally, select a simulator and run the app. The app runs properly, and when you click the increment button, it calls the increment function from the counterModel class. Inside the increment function, the notify listeners method is called. The listener added in the screen page, add listener, ensures that the UI is updated whenever the value changes. We are going to study ChangeNotifier in an even easier way, by using Provider. We use ChangeNotifier with Provider in Flutter because, together, they simplify state management by making it easier to handle app-wide or localized state updates and rebuild the UI when necessary. Key benefits: simplifies state management, manages app state with minimal effort. Avoids manual listener management, automatically handles adding and removing listeners. Enables cleaner and more maintainable code, reduces boilerplate and improves readability. This is why the combination of ChangeNotifier and Provider is highly recommended for simple to moderately complex Flutter apps. We are using the same project to understand ChangeNotifier with Provider, making a few changes to demonstrate its usage. Install Provider first. We need to install the Provider package in the Flutter project. Run this command in the terminal, flutter pub add provider. Once installed, the package will be added to the pubspec.yaml file. Countermodel file. No changes are needed in the countermodel.dart file. Keep it the same as before. Update counter screen file. First, import the provider package, import provider.dart. Remove the init state and dispose methods from the code. This is because Provider automatically handles the jobs of add listener and remove listener, so you don't need to manage them manually. Convert stateful widget to stateless widget. Convert the counter screen widget from a stateful widget to a stateless widget since Provider handles state updates automatically. Remove counter model instantiation. Remove the manual instantiation of counter model from the screen. Access the counter model directly inside the build function using provider.of or the consumer widget. This is used in Flutter to retrieve and access an instance of the counter model provided in the widget tree using the provider package. Provider.of context. This method looks up the widget tree to find a provider of the specified type, t, which in this case is countermodel. The context parameter allows the widget to locate the appropriate provider in the widget hierarchy. Why use it? Instead of manually passing the countermodel object through constructors or widget parameters, provider.of enables direct access to the provided instance from anywhere in the widget subtree. It simplifies the process of accessing state and avoids unnecessary boilerplate code. Once this setup is in place, you don't need to change the rest of your code. Keep all other parts of the code the same. This approach makes the app cleaner and more maintainable. Then we make important changes in the main.dart file. The main changes are in the void main section. Steps to update main.dart. Import provider. First, import the provider package at the top of the file. Modify the RunApp method. The ChangeNotifier provider wraps the MyApp widget, ensuring that the counter model is accessible throughout the app wherever it's needed. The create property is a function that initializes and provides an instance of counter model. Here, counter model is instantiated and supplied to the widget tree. This instance of counter model will be shared with all widgets in the subtree below this ChangeNotifier provider. Child property. The child property specifies the root widget, in this case, MyApp, that will have access to the counter model provided by the ChangeNotifier provider. The child is where the widget tree starts. Run the app. All functionalities work perfectly, and this time we are using ChangeNotifier provider to manage and share state. Then, we create a new project, to-do list, for a better understanding of ChangeNotifier. We will use the same project by deleting all the files related to the counter app. Keep the main.dart file, but remove all the existing code inside it. First, create a task.dart file inside the model folder. Inside it, create a task class with two variables. A string variable named title. A bool variable named isCompleted. Then, add a constructor to initialize these variables. Also, create a function to toggle the isCompleted value, which will represent whether the task is marked as completed or not. Then, create a new folder called Provider. Inside it, create a file named task_manager.dart. In this file, define a class named taskManager that extends ChangeNotifier. Implement all the add, remove, and toggle functions. Each of these functions should also call the notifyListeners method to ensure the UI updates whenever there are changes. Declare a private list variable of the task class to store tasks. Make sure to import the task.dart file. Create a getter for the task list to provide read-only access to the private variable. Add an addTask function. This function adds a new task to the list. After adding the task, call the notify listeners method to refresh the UI and display the updated list. Create a remove task function. This function removes a task from the list. Call the notify listeners method after removal to update the UI. Add a toggle task completion function. This function calls the toggle completion function from the task model class for a specific task. After toggling the completion status, call notify listeners to update the UI. This ensures the task manager class efficiently manages the app state and keeps the UI in sync with the underlying data. Then, create a task_screen.dart file in the screens folder. Inside it, create a stateless widget named task screen. Declare a variable to access the task manager using provider.of_taskmanager context. Return a scaffold widget. Add a title in the app bar, Task Manager. Inside the body, add a column widget. Within the column, use a listview.builder to display all the tasks. Retrieve each task using the index. For each item, use a list tile to display the task. In the list tile, set the title property to display the task title. Use the trailing property to add 2 icon buttons. One button for toggle task completion. Another button for remove task. Call the respective functions from the task manager provider when the buttons are tapped. After the expanded widget, add a padding widget. Inside the padding, include a text field for entering new tasks. Handle the text fields on submitted event. Call the add task function from the task manager provider with the input value. When the add task function is called, the screen updates and displays the new task at the top of the list, thanks to ChangeNotifier. This structure provides a clean, functional UI for managing tasks while leveraging the benefits of ChangeNotifier and provider. Open the main.dart file. Create the MyApp widget. Set a title for the application. In the body property, call the task screen widget. Ensure to import the task_screen.dart file. Then, create the void main function. Wrap the app with a ChangeNotifier provider. Set the task manager provider in the create parameter. Pass the MyApp widget in the child parameter. Don't forget to import the provider package. Also, ensure you import the task_manager.dart file from the provider folder. This ensures the app is properly set up with ChangeNotifier provider, allowing the task manager state to be shared across the application. Now, run the app. When you add a task, it is displayed at the top. When the add task function is called, it triggers notify listeners, which recreates the widget and updates the displayed data. Please note, this is not a fully featured to-do list app, it's designed for understanding how ChangeNotifier works. The toggle function works perfectly, allowing tasks to be marked as complete or incomplete. The remove task function is also functioning well for deleting tasks. I hope this helps you understand ChangeNotifier more clearly. Additionally, it's possible to integrate this functionality into our previously created shopping cart app. If you'd like a video on that, please let me know by commenting below.
Thank you for watching.